ICD-10 code for functional paraplegia. ICD-10 code for functional paraplegia. Functional quadriplegia. If you have been diagnosed with a specific disease or condition, you may want to know what the ICD-10 code for functional paraplegia is. These codes are a standard way to describe the condition and are often used in medical billing and diagnosis. However, you may be unsure of which code you need for your particular situation. The good news is that there is a simple way to find out the code for functional paraplegia. The first thing you'll need to determine is whether your patient has functional paraplegia or a related disease. You'll also need to document whether they're ambulatory and able to use the restroom on their own. If they are unable to do either of these tasks, you'll need to use a different code. If you're unsure of the code, check out our helpful list of codes for functional paraplegia. Functional quadriplegia is a neurological disorder that affects the function of the body's limbs. While the cause of this condition is not known, it is associated with severe disability. These patients need a high level of nursing care and an extended stay in the hospital. Often, they require nursing resources, including physical therapy, rehabilitation, and occupational therapy. But because of its complexity, these diagnoses are not documented as frequently as they should be. Functional quadriplegia is a medical condition that involves complete inability to move. This disability is caused by a disorder that has caused damage to the spinal cord. It can also be related to multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, and Huntington's disease. Other medical conditions that contribute to functional quadriplegia include frailty, morbid obesity, and respiratory diseases. In many cases, this condition is accompanied by debilitating arthritis, which limits the patient's mobility at home and in long-term care facilities. Functional quadriplegia is a condition that results in the complete inability to move. This disability is caused by a spinal cord injury. In addition to spinal cord injuries, the condition can be due to a number of conditions, including cerebral palsy, advanced dementia, and contractures. In addition to being a medical diagnosis, a person with this condition will also need to have a documented diagnosis from their primary physician. A diagnosis of functional quadriplegia can be challenging, but it is a valuable tool for doctors. It can impact the severity of an illness, reimbursement, and geometric length of stay. In the outpatient setting, it can help predict the likelihood of readmission and other health outcomes. This disease code will help you understand the patient's situation and identify any specific medical conditions. Once you've determined a diagnosis, you can record it and bill it. The diagnosis code for functional quadriplegia is G82. This code is a billable diagnosis for paraplegia. It should not be used for reimbursement purposes, but is often appropriate for clinical care. This diagnosis code can be used in the same manner as a non-billable condition. You will need to report a case of this condition in order to receive the most appropriate medical care. If you have a confirmed diagnosis of this disease, use R53.2 as your billing codes. A patient with functional quadriplegia should be properly diagnosed with ICD-10-C. Incorrect diagnosis can impact the severity of an illness, geometric length of stay, and reimbursement. It is also important to remember that a patient with this condition will be more likely to be readmitted than a person with a more common diagnosis. The ICD-10-C code for functional quadriplegia will be the same code for a quadriplegic with no spinal cord damage. There is no coding for functional quadriplegia in ICD-10. If you have a patient with this condition, you can code it as an ICD-10-C. For example, the patient with this condition has an ICD-10 code for functional paraplegia. Using a medical terminology related to the diagnosis, you can determine if your patient has a neurological disorder. The ICD-10-C codes are helpful in tracking this diagnosis. Read this: what does functional quadriplegia mean? Functional quadriplegia, quadriplegics, quadriplegics.